Good morning, guys, and thank you for joining us this morning. We're going to talk through today, obviously, how to land on the cloud safely with the right strategy, essentially. In audience with me, which we'll go through a couple of people that are attending this webinar with us. So I'll just go through myself. So my name's Matt O'Connor. I'm a cloud specialist who's been in the industry for about 15 years. I've got 10 years experience in the Azure cloud arena and help customers guide from a technical and commercial angle. I'll pass to a colleague of mine, Matt McAvoy.
Morning, everybody. I am Matt McAvoy. I am the lead principal architect for Modality. I've been in the cloud business and the IT industry for over 20 years. And my role played out for Modality and with customers and some of our other partners was as an enterprise architect and Azure evangelist.
Thank you, Matt. And we've got two great people who've been supporting us on our journey with the cloud. And I'll pass across to Sergio from Microsoft.
Thanks, Matt. Pleasure to be here with yourselves and all the attendees. I'm a partner technology strategist, not as a competition here, but been in IT for over 25 years, and with Microsoft coming to 9. Passionate for technology and people all together. Thank you.
Thanks, Sergio. And last but no means least, Luke.
Hi everyone, my name is Luke Fussell. I'm Cloud Solutions Architect at Microsoft, focusing around cloud adoption framework and infrastructure. Also been in IT around 10 years, Microsoft about 2 years.
Thank you. So guys, I really just wanted to get you guys to understand what we're going to go through today, and I think really what's intrinsic really is cloud, as we know, underpins any delivery for any new digital business, and especially if you're looking for innovation. I think after 10 years of being in the cloud, it comes as no surprise that there is that the issue of cloud computing is still perplexing many businesses, and when I talk to many organisations, the same things are still coming up. And as you can imagine, obviously, while cloud computing is a foundation for any digital business, you look at the likes of Gartner, and they estimate that 1/3 of enterprises, they don't document a cloud strategy. So it leaves it quite open for that. So CIOs and CTOs don't have a documented estate. They don't know what they don't know, and it makes it harder and more complex to move to the cloud, but also to revert back. I think what we want to get across today is, cloud strategy here clearly defines any business outcome that you're going to seek, and we'll go through some few talking points here. But having a cloud strategy to us removes ambiguity, and it provides clear decision making. And it's quite a good intrinsic way of working, and we see that. From a business perspective, what I wanted to go through today is, some of you may know Modality, some of you might not. So I'll keep this slightly brief, but so Modality with our inception, so we've got a Microsoft heritage of about 15 years now, so 14, 15 years, and we've supported largely unified communications practices from the inception of Link and Skype and Teams. And we've been, probably Microsoft's #1 partner since in the UK, for a number of years. One of the things that we've done, very, very well is a lot of our intellectual IP has been driven through Microsoft Azure. So a lot of our technical aspects are all Azure based. So what myself and Matt McAvoy have done is brought our cloud practice together. And obviously that then kind of fits us in, not just the Teams perspective from UC, but also looks at Office 365 and Azure. So we can offer that end-to-end, consultancy view and managed service opinion, from the top to the bottom. On that note, I'm going to pass across to my colleague, Matt McAvoy. We'll talk you through the next slide.
Thanks, Matt. I think before we kind of go into this slide, it's a really good, there's a really good opportunity here to kind of see firsthand what pitfalls Microsoft have seen. So I'll ask Sergio that question: in what pitfalls do Microsoft see when businesses don't have a cloud strategy? Is that something that you could answer, Sergio?
Well, yeah, certainly. I'll start with the leading point, right? And it's lovely to see this on the screen, and it plugs back to Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework, which is all about leveraging the synergies across people, processes, and technology. And it's been great to be working with Modality on this and see the establishment of such a method that really aligns with that. I would certainly pick, at least on one of the most important pitfalls for any adoption journey. It really remains as the fear of the unknown. Many individuals just going through an organization's cloud adoption journey, including key stakeholders, right? They sometimes don't really get the full sense of what may impact them and their businesses, but more importantly, what the journey could actually entail. There's a lot to undertake because innovation sparks from the fabric up. So think about the pieces of tin, your servers, and so on. With all of that just in the cloud being software defined across not only platform services but also infrastructure. So solution readiness is as important from a technology standpoint as it is from the perspective of the people involved, and that's regardless of the role they may actually play. And really, having the right adoption strategy in place is critical, as what I've just said. Only that way all of the different pieces can actually come well together. And then thinking about the minimum viable product somehow. Historically in IT, we got somehow used to long-running projects. The behemoths, like you think of a 1-year project, 2 years rollout projects. That's not ideal anymore. It's really important to adapt into this new world, this new era with great technologies that are very commoditized. You need to start small with de-risking the journey for a start, bring confidence up, and build on from there to expand across other areas. I hope that answers the question, Matt, and helps people on these events to get a better picture of where to start, really.
Yeah, that's perfect, Sergio. I think what we wanted to kind of get across here is that although we have an adoption method, and that's based on the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework, it's key to try and build a method that works for everybody, and that's what Modality have done here. So our adoption method really are recognized steps that deliver a success and safe journey into Azure. And as you've heard from Sergio, Microsoft and Modality both have experience that shows that following this method, or following a method, delivers a mature and robust platform instead of a haphazard approach that leaves many businesses with accidental architecture, IT sprawl, and bill shock. And that method effectively will help accelerate your journey into Azure. It's key to kind of understand what we'll go through today. So there's 4 items on this flow here. One is strategy, so defining what you need and looking at your motivations. The other one is a business outcome and setting KPIs to keep yourself true. And then there's developing business justifications. So things like increasing your customer base, increasing profits, or driving costs down with operational centers of excellence. And also, as well as is understanding how to pick the first project, but don't try and boil the ocean. I think it's key to kind of keep those 4 ideas in your mind.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Thanks, Sergio. And exactly on that point, strategy is the most important step you must undertake for a successful adoption. It's hugely key to remember these aspects are completed in parallel with multiple business and IT stakeholders. We could, like Matt just touched upon, we could touch on loads of different areas around your strategy and how to define a strategy and drive that through. But I suppose this webinar would be more than 30 minutes. So what we wanted to pick up on really is those key 4 areas that Matt mentioned is about motivations. We want to understand the reason why you want to move to the cloud and obviously understand where they are, understand your business outcomes, engage stakeholders to document specific outcomes. If you look at your business justification, it is about justifying what supports your motivations and your outcomes. So I suppose you can see there's a logical step from this process, and then like Matt identified, it is the first project, which is key, and picking a project that drives the quickest time to value. And what we mean by that is the simplest project to pick is probably the easiest, because you'll get a lot of buy-in. There's nothing worse than having an application that you're running that's very complex that fails at the first hurdle, because when you fail at the start, it's hard to get it to push through when you move it forward.
So I think what we need to kind of look at really is when you're defining your strategy, you need to define the motivations, and the motivations kind of they're the foundation of your strategy. So you might have compelling business events, which could be something around end of support for mission critical technologies. You might have a data center exit. You might be working in an environment that has new compliance changes or regulatory changes. Or you may need to kind of move data from one data center that you have maybe in Europe or another part of the world into a data sovereignty region.
Yeah, and I think touching upon that, Matt, is, when you say such as, end of life support for mission critical applications, you look at things like SQL 2008 R2 and, the extended support that you can move when you move into Azure, and you can get 3 years then to look at the application.
That's true.
Yeah. It is, isn't it? So then you can look at an upgrade path there in your own time. There's no necessary, opportunity there to not innovate.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the other things that there is once you've kind of got yourself into Azure, you can start looking at kind of upgrading those versions of Windows Server into something that's constantly updated, that's constantly fresh, and it's also at the bleeding edge as well.
Yeah, no, agreed. There's also things like migration triggers, and I think the biggest thing that we see is reduction in, vendor and technical complexity. I think we all know when, you've got an IT, IT services, you're providing IT to a company, it is massively complex. You've got a huge amount of vendors. That means you've got to have a huge amount of contracts or a huge amount of external support or even internal support. So you may have a huge IT team. And obviously moving to the cloud can help reduce that complexity. And reduce that vendor support, so you can bring a lot of it together, which can in turn, increase your cost savings. You can look at, increasing business agility, which is huge, from there.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Reasons, one of the key motivations that you might have is around innovation. So you may have products or services that you're looking to take from a siloed environment. You may be sharing applications across one part of your business, and you want to expand that and build that into another part of your business. And cloud's a really good place to do that. One of the key things that you can do with it around the innovation and any of the migration or compelling business events is you can run them in parallel, and you can build out dev and test environments. So it allows you to transform and create new services, and you can feed those back in then to those kind of that ability to kind of increase business agility and then prepare and build new technical capabilities. And that means bringing along your people as well. So you're skilling up your people, your assets within your business. You're providing them with new ways of future-proofing their careers, and also future-proofing the technology estate and the business for future needs and gains and scale for the next step. I think a really good tip here, Matt, is around documentation. So document everything that you're about to do, document everything that you are doing, and then use that documentation to go back and see that you've said you've delivered what you were going to do, what you were going to deliver.
Yeah,
so documentation is a really good tip. Yeah,
it is a great tip, Matt. I think we all like technology, we all like playing with technology, but I think we all fall foul of not wanting to document because it's that mundane part of the work that you don't want to do. But as I said, from a recommendation point of view, this is what we love to do, and definitely document everything that you're doing. So
I love documentation, Matt. Documentation is, I live and breathe it every day. It's the best thing you can do.
Oh,
that was an IT joke.
That's uncommon.
So I think we're kind of looking at, as part of your strategy, really, there's no point having a strategy if you can't identify business outcomes. So a successful transformation journey start with a business outcome in mind. So it's key to understand that cloud adoption can be costly, and it can be time consuming, and there's a big effort involved from all different parts of the business. That's the business stakeholders themselves, that's IT, and that's your user base, it's even your customer base as well. And fostering the right level of support from IT and other areas of the business is really crucial to be successful. And then during any time, the ability to speak in terms of business outcomes, it supports transparency, it gives you cross-functional partnerships. Some of the key KPIs that you need to kind of keep, that you need to kind of build or keep track of for your success are things around fiscal outcomes. So this could be a business will, you need to look at increasing the revenue by 15%, or you want to deploy a new application in Azure. And an IT effectively then will, that will kind of lead into savings in running down your operational costs for the next 12 months. And that could be by reducing your vendor reliance on utilizing native management tools in Azure. Another key aspect of a KPI really is business agility. So you're going to deploy a new app in Azure. This will encourage a new demographic of new customers. The IT agility here is that you can provision test environments really quickly, up to 100% quicker for developers or for your IT staff or for other test scenarios. So you can test new apps, you can test new technology, and also as well as it reduced your costs by using some of the Azure free services, and you can keep below those kind of free caps. And I think as well, business performance is really key to keep that at the forefront of your mind as well. So by moving to the cloud, you may have less business downtime because you've got a modern platform. So you're effectively able to scale and meet demand as and when your customers come online. And IT as well, they can provide that kind of high availability. They can kind of have that resilient environment, and you can run your applications at scale. Your operational costs are minimized as the system is automated, backed up with full DR. So these are just some of the kind of the KPIs you can use to kind of build out those business outcomes. I think another good one as well is business security and compliance. Governments are driving compliance, governments are driving regulation in the IT industry and across business in general. So as a KPI, you may have, that the Azure provides you an out-of-box industry compliance and security through policies and governance. And from an IT KPI, you could probably have at scale and monitoring events with alerting and using things like Azure for those kind of AI technologies to look at security and compliance across your environment, both on-premise, Office 365, and in Azure. So I think having a well-defined strategy and a documented business outcome removes business justification blockers. And these are just some of the myths that must be dispelled. I think, if we got Luke on the call, and Luke's a cloud architect, so Luke, can you kind of talk us through some of these myths and how you would dispel them?
Yeah, sure, Matt. Thanks. I think the last couple of slides with the strategy sort of decisions and outcomes are really important. We often see organizations who are well into the cloud journey who have never really formalized what some of those key motivations are. So it is great to actually go and record those and look into that. And I'll just talk around the point here you have around I can run workloads on-prem cheaper than cloud, for example. So it can be very challenging to look at things like a cost analysis between cloud workloads and on-premises workloads. It can be, especially with on-premises workloads often having hidden costs that are hard to judge. Cloud workloads are no doubt going to change over time as the sort of platform develops and you start to use it in different ways. So I think it's really key to look at this with your strategy in mind and move the conversation away from necessarily the direct cost comparison into what you're trying to achieve and what your outcomes are. So if your goals are to drive innovation, to use new technologies like things like the data lakes or cognitive services and some of the new technologies that may not be available on premises, that may well be much more important than an A/B comparison, and you don't want to necessarily be holding up things like innovation within your organization through that. Of course, it's great to make sure you've got the control of the costs and that you're doing it in an efficient way and using things like scaling to your advantages. But it's more important to base some of these challenges that you'll face along the way on what your outcomes are at the end of the day and focusing on getting that value out for your business.
Cheers, Luke. Sergio, do you see this in your day-to-day role?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You know, we still see a lot of these. Some of these on the screen more than others. You know, and you know, is important to demystify, to remove these blockers. Is again back to my point earlier around the fear of the unknown. At the same time, for some of these, I would like to pick on one scenario here, and you know, to be precise, around mirroring on-premises environments, you know, whether that's going to save money or not in the cloud. It's in fact a myth, but at the same time, it may not be. It really depends. So if I put my architect hat as well, you know, it really depends. And the story here is like the overall TCO is what matters the most when going through such exercise, right? One of the key challenges is that many organizations find really difficult to assess their overall spend, and that's inclusive of operational costs, which are, you know, many times hidden, right? And once in the cloud, really all of those costs get really factored into the spending associated with the specific workloads. So basically, they become more noticeable. Now, the thing that helps there, of course, is, you know, the economy of scale, because that will ensure certainly a lower TCO, but adjusting the technology to the desirable business outcomes is really, really critical, because it's only when, you know, people and organizations maximize benefits such as, you know, increased security or regulatory compliance or better scalability, or even like to the points that Luke was raising around opportunities to drive an innovation, that's when the cost savings become much more evident, because, you know, in a way, you know, certain technologies will never land on premises because the scale isn't there, is impossible as well for organizations to cope with the advancements, and paying small fortunes from their budgets to cope with the advancements. So Microsoft invests to the scale of the GDP of some countries in this platform, right? So I will stop there.
That's fantastic. I think as well, I mean, one of the things that I see on a regular basis is that myth that everything should go in the cloud. Some companies have a cloud-only strategy where they want all of their technology to sit in the cloud, and that's a great strategy to have. But you know, it's not everything can go in the cloud, and it's key to identify where your data is and map that data back to applications and see what those applications are capable of doing. Some applications can't run in the cloud without transforming them at a huge refactoring cost, and that takes money, that takes time, that takes effort. But there's nothing stopping you from doing it. You can still running it in parallel, but it's key to understand where those applications are. It's key to understand who the stakeholders are and whether or not you know, there's anything stopping those applications from running in the cloud. And if they can't run in the cloud, then document why they can't run in the cloud, and maybe look at transforming them later as part of a business outcome or as a business objective.
Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate that. And I think one of the things that we see as well is, you know, you can take all these steps and, you know, you can go through your business outcomes and your business justifications. But if you don't quantify that, as soon as you get to a point of, you know, can I prove a return on investment, it becomes hard to do that. And also that's where your blockers will come back in as well. So, I mean, the one of the things that we can see is cloud migrations can generate an early return on investment if you transport it in the right way. You know, you develop a clear business justification with tangible and relevant costs and returns. It can be a complex process, but if it's done right, which you know we can help you do, you know, it also helps you with unblocking those, you know, financial burdens or challenges that you may have. You know, and I think when you identify, you know, business justifications with stakeholders, you also consider the downstream effects to understand the long-term revenue improvements. You know, document the opportunities unlocked by the cloud by working with the business to calculate revenue increases. You know, so essentially like an Azure total cost of ownership. You know, which is a great way of doing that. But as I said, if you can't quantify it, everything that you've done behind the scenes is just going to become, you know, it's going to fall at the first hurdle.
Yeah, that's I think as well, Matt. It's key to get across here that Microsoft provides some really good total cost of ownership tools which are free to use. You know, and you can kind of go to the Microsoft CAF website and you can kind of see some of those tools that are available for customers to help them, you know, kind of quantify those business justifications, and also as well as understand, you know, what it is, you know, what is a revenue delta and a cost delta. And these can be simple things like, you know, data termination or reduction in your data center costs. It could be, you know, rack termination, so your physical asset recoveries, or it could be something around software renewal avoidance or vendor consolidation, where your operational costs reduce and your potential soft costs reduce as well. So it's key to kind of, you know, look at all of the relevant parts of your environment and kind of really do kind of dig deep into that total cost of ownership, and work with your finance teams as well to kind of understand where those hidden costs are.
Yeah, 100% agree, Matt. You know, 100%. And I think, you know, to leave this on a note really is, you know, and the last thing that we're probably going to talk through is part of the slides is around, and probably the crucial part is defining your strategies, understanding what that first project should be. I think choosing the first project to get into the cloud has to be clearly defined, but also you don't want something overly complex. You know, if you go for a very, very complex workload, as I said to you previously, you know, you can fall at the first hurdle if it fails, because then the business justification that you've created causes issues. And also with Microsoft in the room, what I wanted to lean on here is their expertise and what they see. And Luke, I just wanted to, from your perspective, obviously, you know, we've got some areas there around first project criteria, but what do you feel is a good first project criteria that people should be looking at?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I think as you mentioned earlier in the presentation as well, one of the things that's really good to get from this is something that can drive a fast time to value and have minimum dependencies really for migration. There's a lot to learn along the cloud journey, and making sure you find the projects that you can actually deliver in a good span of time and see tangible value from it that match in with your strategy and have the support of sort of business decision makers within that is really important. We don't really want to end up with your first project being a big 2-year migration of a very complex application. So something that you can pick that has sort of less dependencies and maybe less governance as a sort of dependency on it. It can help you learn things like the people and process changes that might be required, cloud networking, access control and security, and how that may be different in the cloud. And learn as well on things like the DevOps and automation journey for infrastructure, which may be something that's new to the wider IT team. So these sort of things are good to learn in a project that is that right size, and trying to match that from which of your applications are key targets that will drive that value quickly and can demonstrate a pattern that you can use more widely in your organization as your cloud journey matures.
Yeah, 100% agree. And Sergio, from your perspective, what do you think the expectation should be from your first project?
Well, you know, I would go with saying that, you know, pretty much when we talk about the first project or even the wider adoption plan, what's key is really to ensure that organizations can embrace the cloud confidently with a full end-to-end experience, like deployed in an automated fashion and well governed from the head start. And, you know, let me say this, right, because, you know, we've been working closely, and you know, that's part of the reason why we're here. You know, while working with us at Microsoft, Modality have built their, you know, your kind of secure landing zones offering, which is really aimed at, you know, building the right foundations for a more solid journey, right? And that's what we try our best, myself, Luke, and the likes, you know, at Microsoft, to make happen across our partner ecosystem to really drive success for our mutual customers. Pretty much as Luke said, you know, it's important to get into the specifics that are not as complicated, that could accelerate that journey, but provide a good level of understanding of what needs doing, what happens as a result, and, you know, get everyone involved to experience it and build on from there.
No, 100% agree. Certainly. And I think, as I said, from a first project example point of view, as you can see on the screen, you know, I think one of the biggest things that you could look at, which is, you know, it's relatively, you know, non-complex, you know, is looking at things like Azure site recovery for disaster recovery tooling. You know, reduce your dependencies essentially on a second site. or even a third party. You could look at using DR services in the cloud, which I think is great. So guys, just to really wrap things up, I think this is, as I said, the cloud and going to the cloud is a journey. And we know along that journey there's going to be bumps in the road, but it is a long and winding road, and it's, there's a lot for you to do and a lot for you to think about. Obviously, from our perspective, which Matt will touch upon shortly, is we want to try and get you guys cloud ready, and we'd like you to come and talk to us. And Matt, do you want to just talk through the free assessment and things like choosing the right partner?
Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity to really have a bit of an open conversation with Modality, and as part of your strategy, it's always good to understand whether or not you want to kind of do some of these projects on your own, or you need help, or you want to have a partner that will kind of work with you and advise you to avoid the pitfalls, or will kind of help you build and deploy. And what Modality have kind of done really is we've built a product which is the secure landing zone. And that has all the guardrails, and it has all of the relevant kind of best practices built into it from the ground up. And I think as well, one of the things that you need to kind of look at with a partner is can that partner help you to define your cloud strategy? We can help you kind of define your business outcomes and justifications, and kind of work with you and kind of introduce you to tooling, which kind of can help discover and assess and even document your IT estate. And also, as well as I can understand the financials, where your costs are, how can you kind of draw some of that money back into your budgets to kind of use that to invest into the cloud projects. And also, as well as is looking at and identifying, the simplest route to the cloud, looking at those kind of first projects, getting a criteria agreed with the business, and having all the stakeholders agreed, so you don't pick something that is overly complex and then people end up with kind of project fatigue 6 months down the line. This is something that Modality kind of work with customers on a regular basis, and we have a number of kind of workshops we can run with you as well. But it'd be great to kind of catch up with some of the people on the call after this webinar.
Thanks, Matt. And I suppose we are running slightly over, so I do apologise. I don't know if there's any questions from anybody in the audience that want to.
I think if people kind of have any questions, Matt, they can always just send them to our email address. We can answer them, when they've got more time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely. So I suppose, guys, obviously, just to really wrap things up, and if you feel that you've got value from this and our previous webinar around the secure landing zones, please feel free to come and join us at the next stages, which is around planning and readiness. And again, we're following that logical step around the cloud adoption framework. So if you're on that journey and you need to understand more, please come and join us on the 15th, a week today. We'll go from there. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Thanks, folks. Enjoy your day.